I will reiterate my perspective that Trump allowing this to happen, allowing this to go forward, it makes him a traitor and it also makes him a coward. And you would do well to accept that fact. And you would do well to accept that fact. And you would do well to accept that fact. Bill Ackman wants me imprisoned, apparently, for suggesting that American sons and daughters should object to being slaughtered for Israel. Why so triggered? Perhaps because this entire war has been engineered by Israel. Maybe it's that. Donald Trump has very clearly betrayed the American people. You need to accept that. I've had to accept that. He is very clearly not the commander of the armed forces. Bibi Netanyahu is. Miriam Adelson is. And I believe that Charlie Kirk was the first casualty of the war in Iran. And it's also my belief that he was intentionally sacrificed by those who practice occult worship. I'm going to explain to you guys what I mean by that.
Is there any validity to the 1948ers being Satanist? Are there any documented proof that substantiates Candace Owens' claim? The video clip you just watched is titled Romance of a People, Babies Sacrificed to Idol Molech. This event occurred at the Chicago's World Fair in 1933. It was a Jewish historical pageant in which over 150,000 Jews were present and participated in this demonic ceremony. Should we be surprised at this Molech child sacrificial ritual? Should we be surprised seeing an image of Molech seated on a throne, and to add insult to injury, the tablets of the Ten Commandments behind the idol? I'm going to prove to you that this is what Judaism promotes. Let's start with the following source by R.J. Zoe Werblowski and Jeffrey Wiggeter, the Oxford Dictionary of the Jewish Religion entry defining Molech and the worship of Molech. It reads, Molech, Semitic deity worshipped in biblical times, known from Ugaritic and Mesopotamian sources as Moloch. It is likely that Molech figured among the Chthonic gods, that is, those associated with death and the underworld. According to biblical tradition, Molech was worshipped by means of child sacrifice, a practice abhorred and strictly forbidden by Israelite belief and law. Child sacrifice is condemned in the Bible. without mention of the god Molech, as a characteristically repulsive form of Canaanite religion to be shunned by the Israelites. Explicit prohibitions against the worship of Molech are found in Leviticus chapter 18 verse 21 and chapter 20 verses 2 through 5. Sacrificing to Molech is called whoring after him. It desecrates God's name and pollutes his sanctuary. The penalty is death by stoning for the perpetrator and all of his followers. If the court fails to carry out the sentence, the perpetrator and his family are liable to divine punishment. Let's revisit a key deceptive quote from this source. Child sacrifice is condemned in the Bible without mention of the god Molech. This sentence is deceptive by construction. This wording creates a false separation that the Torah itself does not make. The deception is in the phrase without mention of the god Molech. This entry subtly suggests that some child sacrifice is condemned generically, but Molech-specific worship is a different or narrower issue. The Bible condemns child sacrifice, and when it names Molech, it is naming the same act, not a different category. Let's see if we can confirm whether or not the Bible omits Molech when it condemns child sacrifice. Leviticus chapter 18 verse 21 says, "And thou shalt not let any of thy seed pass through the fire to Molech, neither shalt thou profane the name of thy Elohim. I am Yahweh." I just read from the King James Bible version, but let's confirm this with the Tanakh. "And thou shalt not give any of thy seed to set them apart to Molech, neither shalt thou profane the name of thy Elohim. I am Yahweh." Let's go to another rabbinical source to further prove that Judaism allows the worship and sacrificing to Molech. Let's go to the Talmud Sanhedrin 64a. It says, Mishnah, "He who gives of his seed to Molech incurs no punishment unless he delivers it to Molech and causes it to pass through the fire. If he gave it to Molech but did not cause it to pass through the fire or the reverse, he incurs no penalty unless he does both." Gemara. The Mishnah teaches idolatry and giving to Molech. Our Abin said, "Our Mishnah is in accordance with the view that Molech worship is not idolatry. For it has been taught, if one causes his seed to pass through the fire, whether to Molech or to any other idol, he is liable to death." Our Eleazar, son of our Simeon, said, "If to Molech, he is liable. If to another idol, he is not." What the Mishnah is doing with the quote, "He who gives of his seed to Molech incurs no punishment unless he delivers it to Molech and causes it to pass through the fire." This entry, and more specifically, this quote introduces a double technical requirement: delivery to Molech and passing through fire. If only one occurs, then there's no penalty. The more serious problem is, in the Gemara, is this quote. Our Abin said, "Our Mishnah is in accordance with the view that Molech worship is not idolatry." This is the critical line. It explicitly states that one rabbinic position holds: Molech worship is not idolatry. That is a direct theological reclassification. The real shift taking place in Sanhedrin 64a. The Torah frames the offense as an absolute betrayal of Yahweh. The Mishnah reframes the offense as a narrowly defined cultic crime with procedural requirements. The Gemara then goes further and states openly, Molech worship is not idolatry. This is not an accurate interpretation of Leviticus. It is a blatant deception by way of reclassification. Not only does Judaism, by way of the Talmud, endorses the worship and sacrifices to Molech, but this religious system promotes the usage of charms by way of eggs. Sanhedrin 101a reads, quote, "Our rabbis taught it is permitted to consult by a charm the spirits of oil or eggs, but that they give false answers. Incantations are made over oil contained in a vessel, but not in the hand. Therefore one may anoint with the latter, but not with the former."
Tucker Carlson, he is trending right now. By the way, he's trending always. What he is doing right now is so remarkable and so brave, and he is challenging the conversation, changing our understanding about the way politics works. I mean, he's just been so objectively honest and, again, brave in what he is doing.
Growing up in Sunday school, I was taught from the Bible, those who bless Israel will be blessed, and those who curse Israel will be cursed. And from my perspective, I want to be on the blessing side of things.
Of those who bless the government of Israel?
Those who bless Israel is what it says. It doesn't say the government of, it says the nation of Israel. So that's in the Bible. As a Christian, I believe that.
Where is that?
I can find it to you. I don't have the scripture off the tip of my... You pull out the phone and use the...
It's in Genesis. But so you're quoting a Bible phrase. You don't have context for it. And you don't know where in the Bible it is, but that's like your theology? I'm confused. What does that even mean?
Tucker.
I'm a Christian. I want to know what you're talking about.
Okay. Where does my support for Israel come from? Number one, because biblically we're commanded to support Israel. But number two...
Hold on.
No.
Hold on. You're a senator, and now you're throwing out theology, and I am a Christian, and I am allowed to weigh in on this. We are commanded as Christians to support the government of Israel?
We are commanded to support Israel. And what
does that mean, Israel?
We're told those who bless Israel will be blessed.
Hold on, define Israel. This is important. Are you kidding? This is a majority Christian country.
Define Israel? Do you not know what Israel is? That would be the country you've asked like 49 questions about.
So that's what Genesis, that's what God is talking about.
The nation of Israel, yes.
So is that the current borders, the current leadership? He's talking about the political entity called Israel?
He's talking about the nation of Israel. Yeah, nations exist, and he's discussing a nation. A nation was the people of Israel.
Is the nation
They're the descendants
God's
of
referring
Abraham.
to in Genesis, is that the same as the country run by Benjamin Netanyahu right now?
Yes.
It is. And all of this was justified on the basis of this identity that is the ticket to the right that you keep referring to. So my question is very simple. I'm going to wait patiently for an answer. Does this right derive from religious affiliation or from genetics?
But he's trending right now for a rather obscure reason. It was actually a simple tweet that has a lot of his routine haters melting down. This is the tweet. I'll show you that. He wrote, "Pray that the spell breaks and the world is saved." That's all he wrote. Of course, we should pray. But what is triggering them about that? I think I know. I think it's the term, a spell. Yeah, a spell. Because a spell implies some sort of witchcraft or magic is at work. And the timing of this tweet really is something, because I have had it on my heart and on my mind all weekend to find the right words to convey to my audience that what is going on in this world is literally and exactly that. People that practice occult magic are in this moment pushing for World War III.
Let's be clear. Reading the testimony of survivors of October 7th from Kibbutz Be'eri, like Yasmin Porat, was extremely harrowing. What she alleges is not only that her husband was killed in the initial takeover, but also she then says that the Israeli military tanks fired on the room where the hostages were, killing 12 Israeli civilian captives. We have also seen fantastic work in the Haaretz newspaper by Amos Harel, where he speaks at length about Brigadier General Rosenfeld, who was in charge of the Haaretz crossing. Now, when this military base was taken over, what he says, Amos Harel in Haaretz, the well-known Israeli newspaper, he says that Rosenfeld, when he realized that the base was overtaken, called in an airstrike. This is in Haaretz. These are not my words. These are the words of Amos Harel. What we then saw is, since October the 7th, 22 Israeli civilian detainees killed in Gaza by Israeli airstrikes.
Some of them are holding their own civilians hostage, but what about our civilians?
Yeah. So it's the same thing. If Israel would tell them, we're going to destroy you, and there are no conditions, there's nothing you can say that's going to stop us, then what do they need the hostages for?
But Amalek also just killed.
That's why we just have to kill them.
So they're gonna kill our hostages either way.
So where does that leave us? See what they are? If they say, you can't bomb us, you're going to kill the hostages. So we're helpless. We can't do that. We are not helpless. We're going to do what we're going to do.
אפילו בקש את זה. בכל העניינים. בזמן שישראל לאחרונה נמצאו כמה עניינים. פתחו כמה. מה שרואה עוד, וגם משהו שעדיין משאיר ליבו. אז הייתה משהו למה ידיעתו. ועושים. הכנראה שהיא מספיק, כאילו שהיום כבר כמה שעות בגיל עדיין ליבו, אבל יש עוד כמה שעות, אז יש להשתדל גם היום, בבשורות טובות. יש שמחה וטוב ליבו. כדי שחסידים מקפידים שכל עניינים יהיו שמחה. בשורות טובות, הצלחה רבה.
The Israeli military has something called the Hannibal Directive. The Hannibal Directive was developed in Lebanon in the 80s by the Israelis with the clear understanding that they do not want the other side to take hostages. So, for example, you have the case of Hada Golding in 2014, what Israel called Operation Protective Edge, which killed over 2,200 Palestinians. But when this Israeli soldier was taken captive by the Palestinians, Israel then proceeded to kill everyone, including the civilians in the area around where he was kept and the soldier himself. So what Israel has, unfortunately, is a policy of killing captives.
We're gonna make history. We're gonna change how everything is gonna look, and we're gonna do it right.
From the Jordan River to the Middle East, that's all ours. It was promised to us. There's no Palestinian nation. No one wants them, so why we? Because we are good. We finished to be good 3 weeks ago.
I think the bombing is good. I think they should have a lot more of the bombing, the bombarding. I think we can do a lot more inside of Gaza. It's a fight between the good and the bad, the good and the evil.
The only innocent people that are in Gaza now are the 229 hostages that were taken. Once they will go back to Israel, we will bomb Shifa Hospital, all the hospitals, all the tunnels, and kill them all.
People that practice occult magic are in this moment pushing for World War III. And I think that's hard for a lot of people to process because we grow up and we learn that there are in effect really 3 major monotheistic religions in the West. So the idea that actually there are people that are in charge of Western governments that are in essence really pagan and could be making literal blood sacrifices to various demons, that kind of evades us. It evades our understanding of the world because we look at Hollywood, we look at culture. Hollywood in particular has been ever intentional in assisting sort of the implausibility of such a narrative, right? Movies, books that are published, if they delve into the topic of witchcraft and spell casting, it's reserved really for the category of fantasy, right? It's fantasy if they're discussing it, or it's being mocked, Hocus Pocus, or Harry Potter, really. What sort of crazy person would believe that ancient pagan practices are still happening in the real world? Okay, maybe in some remote third world village in Africa, but in the developed Western world, at the tippity top of government, you would be mad to even suggest it. Even when it's actually in our faces. Take, for example, this recent Paris fashion show collection from a brand known as Material Fecal. Just so you know, that translates to fecal matter. Wow, must have really been an inspired show. Fecal matter. Wow, no, so in your face, but don't you take it the next step further and think that, these people could be into some dark stuff. That would make you, again, a crazy person. What about the much celebrated visual artist to the stars, the Serbian one? She's also an artist to the politicians. She does spirit cooking, literally. That was what was in those emails. Marina Abramovic.
nothing has caused so much controversy and the development of numerous theories as the thing called spirit cooking, an event that would normal person consider as bizarre and morbid. But for Marina and many Hollywood and music stars, it is completely normal. Marina would organize dinners where food is served in the form of human bodies or corpses. And those types of dinners would only have exclusive guests, such as movie stars, singers, and even politicians. Now, that same guests would often take their part in this and have fun with cutting out imaginary organs. Now, me personally, I cannot find any resemblance with anything other than cannibalism. You know, just chilling around some human heads and eat some body parts. Seems like a perfectly fine way to spend an evening, if your name is Jeffrey Dahmer. And it is no secret that many stars collaborated with Marina, whether it was because of some spiritual upliftment or something else. There are even rumors that on one occasion she left Lady Gaga completely naked in the middle of the forest to find her way back. Bizarre. Then, for example, this guy. The guy you may know from the cult movie American Psycho, or in the role of possibly the worst Joker ever to appear on the big screen. A guy who was also seen to attend these kinds of dinners. And to be perfectly honest, he's not the only one. Many more people from the music or film industry have passed through the hands of Marina Abramovic. And there is the same question for all of them. Why? And if there is something that is not missing when her name is in question, there is accusations. Starting with brainwashing, through implementing some ideologies, all the way to practicing witchcraft and performing ritualistic practices.
Like in 1974, when she sought to, quote, re-evoke the energy of extreme bodily pain using a large petroleum-drenched pentagram, which the artist lit on fire at the start of the performance. Standing outside of the pentagram, Abramovic cut her nails, her toenails, and her hair. When she finished with each, she threw the clippings into the flames, creating a burst of light each time, burning the pentagram, representing a physical and mental purification.
The body art, in which Marina began to examine the limits of psychophysical endurance, is related to the festival in Edinburgh in 1973. The performance with 20 knives was the first in the series of 10 actions called Rhythms, and Marina then inflicted minor bodily injuries on herself for the first time. She used the knives by sticking them quickly between her fingers, and whenever she cut a finger in a hurry, she would take another knife. Her initial idea was to match the beater's rhythm so that she always knew in advance when the knife would touch her skin. In the action Rhythm 5, performed at the April meetings in 1973, she exposed herself to new dangers. She actually lit a fire around 5-pointed star, and after burning locks of hair and nails, she lay down in its center. She almost suffocated, and it took the audience a long time to understand that Marina was not pretending to be in trance, but really lost consciousness.
That's just art, guys. That's just art. Don't you think a step further? No, come on, that's just art. And on the matter of science, even when it's in our faces, like when the world's leading nuclear physicists are caught, cloaked before a statue of Shiva, stabbing a woman in an occult ceremony for CERN, well, you guys, that's just science. That right there that you are looking at on your screens was science, the best science, the best that science has to offer, the most ingenious people. And indeed, I would agree that it's modern science. In fact, the entire thrust of what was deemed the scientific revolution, a move away from the natural order of things and towards empiricism, rationality, that began because of a long organized Freemasonic effort to remove humanity from our innate spiritual understanding, okay? They wanted you to know that you can now ignore your God-given instincts. You can set aside your subconscious, that subconscious that comes online and lets you know that something is not right. Yeah, you can just set that aside and trust the experts instead. In fact, the experts constantly reinforce to us that our subconscious is wrong, or it's just weird. And in some cases, it's immoral, it's devilish even. You want to go see your grandmother while she's dying in the middle of COVID? What are you, Satan? You're being guided by Satan. If you don't listen to Dr. Fauci, that's who you're being guided by. Because there's no greater source of authority in their world than the government.
Let the church say amen. Let the church, everybody, say amen. Say amen.
Prayed a lot to God during this time. And you know what? God did answer our prayers. He made the smartest men and women, the scientists, the doctors, the researchers. He made them come up with a vaccine. That is from God to us. And we must say, thank you, God. Thank you. And I wear my vaccinated necklace all the time to say, I'm vaccinated. All of you. Yes, I know you're vaccinated. You're the smart ones. But you know there's people out there who aren't listening to God and what God wants. You know this. You know who they are. I need you to be my apostles.
Let the church say amen. Let the church, everybody, say amen. Say amen.
If we raise our vaccination rate, protect ourselves and others with masking, expanded testing, and identify people who are infected, we can and we will turn the tide on COVID-19. It'll take a lot of hard work. It's going to take some time. Many of us are frustrated with the nearly 80 million Americans who are still not vaccinated, even though the vaccine is safe, effective, and free. While the vaccines provide strong protection for the vaccinated, we read about and hear about and we see the stories of hospitalized people on their deathbeds, among the unvaccinated over the past few weeks. This is a pandemic of the unvaccinated.
One person has contracted COVID and died after being fully vaccinated.
We are learning more about a woman in the North Bay who was fully vaccinated, got COVID, and then died.
Her friends say she was a talented painter, singer, and businesswoman. They also believe that she and other vaccinated people got infected during a performance at a Sausalito bar.
My issue with this whole vaccine debate is that I think that, from the beginning of COVID, the American people are pretty good at their own risk assessment. I think when they become really irrational and sort of, deranged about it is when they feel pushed into a corner. And that has been the whole story of this vaccine rollout in my mind. It's just been name and shame and blame. And oh, by the way, even if you do the thing we want you to do, we're still going to treat you.
You still
right.
can't.
There's no cost benefit.
Still got to wear your mask.
Right, exactly. And I'll be totally honest. That is why I got the vaccine, right? I decided there were two things I really wanted to do. One was travel, and the other was live my life again, like normally without restrictions. Those were overwhelming factors for me. As a relatively healthy person, I decided I wanted to do it for those reasons. All of this hype now, that you can't do anything, regardless if you're vaccinated, and you should blame those 80 million people for, every possible thing wrong under the sun, I just think is one of the most destructive forces I've seen in our politics lately.
Let the church say amen. Let the church, everybody, say amen. Say amen.
I don't mean to brag, I don't care, but I want you to know, double vaxxed, booster, flu shot, and I'm gonna be honest, I have the shingle shot too. And I still get my period. What? Yes! Traveled, went to Mexico twice, did shows, meet and greets, never got COVID. Clearly, Jesus loves me the most. Seriously. So nice, so nice.
You guys know, if you're part of my book club, I've been doing a lot of research into Freemasonry. About a month ago, while we took a break to prepare for our Bride of Charlie series, someone sent me this. I'm showing you, this is what they sent me in the mail. Something that is known as a Freemason Bible. Now, I knew that these existed because of my studying Sigmund Freud and looking into the fact that he had inherited one from his father. The backstory of this one in particular came with a handwritten letter, is that a 33rd degree Freemason out in Oklahoma died, and all of his belongings were left in a home that was eventually auctioned off. And the person who had this in his possession, his relative was the person who acquired the home. And they went in and they burnt everything in it effectively, thinking that it was obviously just carrying bad spirits. But he, for some reason, had the sense that he should keep this one item. For no particular reason, he kept it in the back of his truck for over a decade. And when he saw me covering the history of Freemasonry and what they believe, trying to discern what it is that they believe, he felt that this was the reason that he had kept it all those years. So he just sent it to me to provide me further insight into what they believe and what they practice at the top of Freemasonry. This is not your granddad's Freemason lodge, okay? No, my dad was a lodge. It was just no, this is not that. That is not what 33rd degree Freemasonry is. So I flipped through this immediately after we did douse it in holy water. I flipped through it. And within the very first pages, there was a pentagram with various illustrations inside of it, notes around it. I'm going to show you that now. We just took a picture for you to see it. There at the bottom. And in case you can't see what is pointing to the middle, it says place of sacrifice or worship. Okay? Place of sacrifice or worship in the middle there. So I want you to note that in this Freemason Bible, it illustrates that a sacrifice must be made in the center of a pentagon. That's a pentagon. 5 sides, like a house. And I thought, how curious that Charlie was indeed seated in the center of a pentagon when he was killed. Let me demonstrate that for you. You can see that right there. Again, it was my independent study into Sigmund Freud that led me to learning about B'nai B'rith, the Jewish Freemason group, whom I believe have been running our country since at least the Civil War. I've done my best to consume and learn about what it is that they believe, what they practice. This is occult mysticism, okay? The satanic panic that happened was real. Children are being harmed. They have been harmed in occult ceremonies for a very long time. This is an ancient practice. And this is not to be confused with Judaism in any way. In fact, they rely on you confusing it. In no shape or form does this have anything to do with any of the monotheistic religions, okay? Judaism is merely a mask that these pagan occultists wear, just like Christianity is one of the masks that they wear. The Star of David, as they term it, is in fact an occult symbol meant to represent King Solomon's ring. There is no way that you can avoid this. There's no way that they can try to rewrite history. It is quite literally known as the Seal of Solomon. I'm going to show you this. This is on Wikipedia. This is that accessible. We can read parts of this together. It reads, "It is often depicted in the shape of either a hexagram or a pentagram. In mystic Jewish lore, the ring is variously described as having been given to Solomon, the power to command the supernatural. Due to the proverbial wisdom of Solomon, it came to be seen as an amulet or a talisman or a symbol or character in medieval magic and Renaissance magic, occultism, alchemy." Ladies and gentlemen, this is literal witchcraft.
Diana says, we have a friend who seems to want to delve more and more deeply into conspiracy theories. He told us that the Star of David is actually a satanic symbol widely used in pagan and occult areas. The only thing I can find on the internet about it is that it was introduced by Mr. Rothschild in the 40s and that he was not a believer but had ties to the occult. Can you please tell us the truth behind this symbol? And we are Messianic believers, and we would like to be able to confront these anti-Semitic theories with truth. Thank you for your response. All right, well, let me just tell you, Diana, I've heard this stuff before over the years. You are absolutely right. It's born out of anti-Semitic thinking. People who want to be opposed to Israel will find anything they can to complain about Israel, anything that is accepted as being the things of Israel, whether it being a kippah or a talit or a Star of David or some other symbology that is associated with Israel. They always want to tie it back to the cult. Here's the reason why. Well, we know we don't want to have anything to do with the devil, right? We don't want to have anything to do with the symbols of the devil. And if all of a sudden all of these things that are symbols of Israel are symbols of the devil, well, then guess what the logic is? So you stay away from Israel and anything to do with Israel. I want to remind you of something. Israel is the name of the kingdom. That's the name of the kingdom. So do you think there's a possibility that the devil, who hates the kingdom of God, could possibly conjure up some lies to deceive people, to get you to follow a lie and get you to go away from the things of the Lord? Yeah, I think that's been his dominant tactic throughout the entire history of mankind. So here's what I say when somebody comes up to me and wants to talk to me about, well, you know, the Star of David, you know, it's a satanic symbol. Get out of my face. Get behind me, Satan. I'm not listening to your lies. You go sell that lie stuff down in the ditch. You get down there with the rest of your anti-Semitic idiots. We're serving the Lord here. And we're going to pursue the light, not the darkness. And we don't waste our energy on stupid arguments going around to defame other people. Believe me, there's enough demons in this world and there's enough evil in this world. We don't have to go searching for it out of God's people. Let's encourage God's people and strengthen God's people and edify people and seek that which is pure and kind instead of trying to find complaint with something that we see as a common thing associated with Israel or with God's people. What a bunch of wasted time. So I really don't waste any of my time on those people. And what I would say is I'm not interested in discussing any of this with you, and you need to stop wasting your time on this.
That is why, as is further stipulated on this Wikipedia page, the Seal of Solomon was once featured on the flag of Nigeria and the flag of Morocco. Those are not known to be Jewish countries. Freemasons worship Solomon as the master architect. They believe that he gave them the keys to build and therefore control societies. This is how you build a matrix, in effect, right? That is the reason why Aleister Crowley, who was a master, was occultist, created an entire religion around this, put together a series of books, a series of pentacles that are meant to summon various spirits. I want you to hear me when I say that. They are intentionally summoning demons. First book he wrote was called The Book of Evil Spirits. Wow, look at that Star of David all over it. What do you mean this is not associated with Judaism? It's associated with Baal worship. I cannot stress this enough. That is what those in power practice. It is what they believe. It is ancient, it is occult, and it is magic. I believe that the manner of Charlie's death was also intended to cast a spell.
Candace Owens shared a great deal of information about the hexagram and the pentagram, and their connection to what is commonly called the Star of David, also referred to as the Seal of Solomon or the Ring of Solomon. However, as my grandmother used to say, she left a lot of meat on the bones. There are deeper layers to this discussion that were not addressed. The real key to understanding the hex that appears across what are often called the Abrahamic faiths is tied to a much larger biblical concept, the mark of the beast. What exactly is the mark of the beast? According to Revelation chapter 13, verse 18, the number associated with the beast is 666. The passage reads, "Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. The scripture challenges us to calculate or count the number. It is not presented as a mystery meant to remain hidden, but rather as something that requires discernment and understanding. Once we begin to examine the symbolism surrounding this number, particularly in relation to the hex, the six-pointed star, and the broader religious systems that adopted it, we begin to see that there is far more to the story than what is commonly taught. The mark of the beast is described as 666. According to the text, this number is identified as the number of a man, or more accurately, it represents the systems established by man. The number of man traces back to the foundation laid in Genesis chapter 1, verses 26 and 27, where mankind is first introduced in the creation account. The passage reads, "And Elohim said, Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth." So Elohim created man in his own image. In the image of Elohim created he him. Male and female created he them. Let's skip down to verse 31. It reads, "And Elohim saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And the evening and the morning were the sixth day." Many of us, largely because of movies like The Omen, grew up believing that the mark of the beast, 666, was some kind of literal mark or tattoo placed on a person's scalp, just like the character Damien in the film. But that idea comes from Hollywood, and perhaps even from a kind of subliminal programming that shaped how people imagined this passage. Nevertheless, when we return to the text itself, the mark of the beast is better understood as representing the systems of man, the structures, institutions, such as religions and authority created by mankind. So, the next question, how does this connect to the hexagram or the pentagram? And more importantly, how could one demonstrate that an entire nation, starting with the commander-in-chief, is operating under what could be described as a hex? To begin exploring that idea, consider this source from Chabad titled, "Where Are the 600,000 Letters of the Torah?" published July 23, 2010. It reads, Question: I have been told that there are 600,000 letters in the Torah scroll, and I always understood this to be the case. However, I was recently made aware that if one actually counts the letters, one would find that there are just over half that amount of letters in a standard Torah scroll. How do we reconcile the number 600,000 with a more accurate count? Response: there are 304,800 plus letters in the Torah, but as you noted, we often hear of the 600,000 letters in the Torah. Several non-standard methods of counting are offered to arrive at the number 600,000. Who created the so-called 600,000 letters of the Torah doctrine? What and who do they represent? What's the significance? Where Are the 600,000 Letters of the Torah published on July 23, 2010, it reads, "There's yet more significance to the idea of inverse letters. The 600,000 letters correspond to the 600,000 souls of Israel. Although there are many more than 600,000 Jews, there are 600,000 general souls which divide into the individual sparks that become each of our souls." This sounds like some Transformers, Megatron mystical doctrine when it comes to the so-called individual sparks. Let's go to another source, Robert Gamer. Written in Hidden Letters in the Torah, it reads, "The Zohar Kadash states that there are 600,000 letters in the Sefer Torah, which correspond to the 600,000 souls of the 12 tribes of the Jewish people. Similarly, the Megale Amukos writes that the soul of every Jew stems from one of the 600,000 letters in the Torah. The name Yisrael itself can be viewed as an acronym for the words Yesh Shishim, Ribo Otiot La Torah. There are 60 myriad 600,000 of letters in the Torah. The number 600,000, according to this mystical source, is presented as a mystical figure connected to the letters of the Torah and, according to this doctrine, is said to represent 600,000 souls of the 12 tribes of Israel. This raises an important question. When did the terms Jew and Jewish begin to be used as if they represented all of Israel? That shift in language is significant because words shape how history and identity are understood. In many ways, this is one of the many conceptual hexes that have been placed on the broader narrative presented to the world.
Do me, sue me, everybody do me, kick me, kite me, don't you black or white me. All I wanna say is that they don't really care about us. All I wanna say is that they don't really care about us. All I wanna say is that they don't really care about us.
Now let's move to another key event that helps illustrate how symbolism can operate on a national scale. For example, Hands Across America. An article published by History.com titled Remembering Hands Across America, published on May 16, 2016, explains the event. It reads, Cragen proposed an audacious plan, called a stunt by United Press International, to raise between $50 million and $100 million for hungry and homeless Americans by enlisting 6 million people to form a coast-to-coast human chain on May 25, 1986. The undertaking was so great that it required 9 months and a staff of 400 to plan it, hoping to replicate the success of We Are the World, USA for Africa, produced another charity power anthem to be played on radio stations across the United States to promote the event. Composed by New York jingle writers, Hands Across America was set to premiere during halftime of Super Bowl 20 until Michael Jackson protested because he believed it upstaged We Are the World, which he co-wrote with Lionel Richie. Organizers pulled the song, and Americans who tuned in to watch the Chicago Bears maul the New England Patriots were instead treated to a commercial featuring Hands Across America celebrity co-chairs Bill Cosby and Lily Tomlin. This also sheds light on the message conveyed in the song They Don't Care About Us by Michael Jackson, a song as a critique of 1948ers. It raises an interesting question about symbolism and numbers. Why was the goal set at 6 million participants? Out of all the possible numbers, why 6 million? Some writers point to Jewish mysticism, particularly traditions associated with Kabbalah, where certain numbers are sometimes discussed in symbolic or mystical terms. Within that context, the number 6 million has been referenced in discussions about spiritual symbolism and collective identity. One source that touches on this topic is an article titled 6 Million, a Kabbalistic Number, published on October 31, 2009. The article states, it is numerologically predetermined and through various dark conjuring rites, supernaturally imbued with power. As a result, it can never ever be changed. This is critical, central to the hex. 6 million is the number. There are never more deaths, there are never less. 6 million is the number. It must be ritually repeated and publicly acknowledged. As we already see, 6 million never refers to actual deaths. It is a purely symbolic, esoteric, mystical number symbolizing the perfect result, a perfect creation, a magical great work in progress.
There's really 100 million people around the world that have this Israelite identity. There's really 100 million people around the world that have this Israelite identity.
There's really 100 million people around the world that have this Israelite identity.
Is there a reason that the Jewish people that represent, and I want to get back to this because you didn't let me finish a while ago, they represent 0.2% of the world's population. In the entirety of the world, there are about 16 million Jews total. In the entirety of the world, there are about 16 million Jews total.
There's really 100 million people around the world that have this Israelite identity.
16 million.
100 million.
16 million.
There's really 100 million people around the world that have this Israelite identity coming from the tribes. And Israel's, smaller than the size of New Jersey. Is it sustainable to think in the way of having to convert and bring back? And if you look at the Lemba, they don't even want to convert. They said, why are we converting to something we're already part of?
Remember this quote. This is critical, central to the hex. 6 million is the number. There are never more deaths. There are never fewer. 6 million is the number. It must be ritually repeated and publicly acknowledged.
When you said on Patrick Bet Davis' podcast as well, they play the victim card so effing much about Jewish people. I mean, do you not understand why Jewish people might feel a sense of victimhood, given that 6 million of them were killed in World War II by a genocidal monster in the Holocaust? Do you not understand why that might make Jewish people feel that, yes, they have indeed been victims?
Yeah, I mean, that figure's been revised, but, you know, I believe that Jewish supremacy is the greatest threat to America, and I think it's the greatest threat to the world today. I truly believe that.
What do you mean the figure's been revised? What do you mean?
Well, they said that it was 4 million that died in Auschwitz, and then they said it was down to 1 million, so they've revised the figure.
This reduced numbers are confirmed with the article titled, "Poland Agrees to Change Auschwitz Tablets," published on June 17, 1992. It reads, "After 50 years of deflecting the requests of Jewish groups, the Polish government has agreed to change the wording on stone tablets at Auschwitz and Birkenau, the adjacent Nazi camps where more than 1 million Jews died during World War II. The move follows decades of appeals by Jewish groups who say the current plaques do not fully reflect the suffering of Jews there and focus too heavily on the camp's non-Jewish victims. While thousands of non-Jews were among the estimated 1.5 million killed at Auschwitz, the victims were predominantly Jewish. Key quote from the actual updated Auschwitz tablets: "The Nazis murdered about 1.5 million men, women, and children, mainly Jews from various countries of Europe. This is an extremely high reduction of 2.5 million from the total 6 million number that's rehearsed."
It's really unfathomable, and 600, I hope everyone understands, 600 fatalities in Israel proportionally is like having here 20,000 American fatalities. 20,000 people who are being butchered, massacred by these savage terrorists. It's our 9/11.
Well, there are not very many Jews on the planet. Due to conspiracy theories, people tend to think there are tens of millions of Jews on the planet. The grand total number of Jews on planet Earth is about 15 million. About 7 million who live in the state of Israel. There are about 6 million who live in the United States.
Statements like this highlight how numbers can take on symbolic power when they are constantly repeated and reinforced in public discourse. When a number is repeated over and over through media, institutions, and public narratives, it can become embedded in the collective consciousness. From this perspective, some argue that the number 6 million functions almost like a ritualized figure, one that is continually invoked and rehearsed through public memory, media, and cultural narratives. In that sense, the number itself becomes part of a broader symbolic framework that people interpret as carrying ideological or mystical significance. Whether one views it as symbolism, numerology, or simply historical repetition, the key point being raised is that numbers can be used to shape narratives and reinforce identities, especially when they are consistently presented as fixed and unquestionable figures in public discourse. To further illustrate what I'm referring to as the hex imposed on the world, particularly through the influence of mass media, religions, politicians, and from traditional news outlets to today's social media platforms, take a moment to consider the following video clip. This clip comes from a video that was eventually removed from YouTube. As you watch, pay close attention not only to what is being said, but also to how the message is presented and repeated. Watch and listen carefully.
Here's 10 newspapers where these Jews are pushing this 6 million figure between the years of 1915 and 1938. The first newspaper is The Sun of New York. New York, June the 6th, 1915. That is The Sun. It's the first page of the 5th section that I want. And there we go. the sun. It's a bit ripped along there, it's all come off a bit. The 5th section is the front page. And the article is called Horrors Worse than Kishinev, Charged Against Russia Today. Now there's the big article, takes up most of the page. So go in, yeah, go. Since the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, the Jewish people have had no darker page in their history than that which the Russian government is writing today. 6 million Jews, one half of the Jewish people throughout the world, are being persecuted, hounded, humiliated, tortured, starved. Thousands of them have been slaughtered. Hundreds of thousands of Jews, old men, women and children, are being driven mercilessly from town to town. There it is, people. 6 million Jews. One half of the Jewish people throughout the world are being persecuted, hounded, humiliated, tortured and starved. As I go along here, it's brought here as well. Dear brethren, have mercy on the 6 million Jews in Russia and take our part. Again, 6 million Jews in Russia. 6 million. This is in an article entitled Horrors Worse than Kishinev, Charged Against Russia Today. That's in the Sun of New York, Sunday, June the 6th, 1915. This is 18 years before Hitler ever set foot in the government. 18 years. This is the next newspaper. This is New York Times again. It's from 1918. There it is, the New York Times, October the 18th, 1918. It's page 12 that I want. There we go, page 12. Page 12, the New York Times, October the 18th, 1918, and the article is called $1 billion Fund to Rebuild Jewry. There it is. 6 million souls will need help to resume normal life when war is ended. 6 million souls. As I go down the article here, as again, 6 million Jews need help. 6 million. 6 million Jews need help. That's in an article called $1 billion Fund to Rebuild Jewry. That is in the New York Times, October the 18th, 1918.
That piece, by the way, about the symbolism, sort of overt and in your face, is also made clear in the very early pages of this quote-unquote Freemason Bible. That symbolism is actually crucial. In fact, it's a science to them. You're not imagining things. Right here at the top, it states this. Again, from this quote-unquote Freemason Bible. It reads, "It has been correctly stated that symbolism constitutes the very essence of Freemasonry. Freemasonry is essentially the science of symbolism." Further down, it offers us a section entitled The Science of Symbolism Explained. It reads, "A symbol or an emblem is an occult representation of something unknown or concealed by a sign or a thing that is known." So something you recognize kind of carrying different meaning. And it gives us some examples. Incredibly, you wouldn't believe me if I didn't show it to you. It gives the example of a square. Square is in Freemasonry an emblem or a symbol of morality. A plumb line, the symbol of rectitude, and the beehive as a symbol of industry. Yes, they do communicate to one another using symbols, as I have maintained from the very beginning, by the way. Kash Patel continually stressing 33 hours was not random. It did not feel subtle. It seemed to me and to many others that was some sort of signaling. 33, everyone was just saying 33 all the time.
For 33 hours, I was praying that if this had to happen here, that it wouldn't be one of us, that somebody drove from another state, somebody came from another country. Sadly, that prayer was not answered the way I had hoped for, just because I thought it would make it easier on us if we could just say, hey, we don't do that here.
So look, I have not exactly found the correct words to communicate how I feel about President Donald Trump. I sort of ignore the topic of his existence altogether because it kind of sickens me, as it should. It should. If you were 2015, 2016 running around in MAGA hat, catching all of the figurative bullets for supporting him, standing up to the never Trumpers who are now running his administration, this level of deceit and betrayal should sicken you, right? The human spirit isn't really meant to contend with that sort of deceit. You're not supposed to even fathom a scenario where someone like Charlie Kirk quite literally dedicates his entire professional career, builds up an organization meant to help Trump, to empower Trump, conservative principles, one way or the other. And in return, when Charlie Kirk is assassinated in front of the world, Trump dedicates a total of two tweets, 3 tweets at most, to demanding, and he'd never demanded an investigation. And one of those tweets that he dedicates to Charlie Kirk is an AI image of Charlie hugging an Israeli flag? Yeah, it's pretty gross. Trump has shown more interest in debunking the mainstream media narrative about whether or not he's balding than he showed any interest in investigating who murdered a person who was supposed to be his dear friend. It was, I will employ every reason. Nope, he was good. So how exactly are we supposed to process that? We are to simply understand, I think, that Trump has loyalty to no one but himself. It probably wasn't even anything that deep that they offered him. It was probably just like, hey, we'll give you a piece of real estate in Gaza with your name on it. Also, favorable headlines in the New York Times. We put that on your desk every morning and we tell you this is how everybody thinks. You think they still have power. Honestly, that's probably all it took for Trump to betray not just the legacy and the memory of Charlie Kirk, but also his supporters. The very supporters who followed him into battle. Some who literally spent time in prison after January 6th because they believed in him. Trump has betrayed every last single one of us, okay? Make no mistake about that. Trump is now a never-Trumper. The very people that we had to fight to get Trump into office, he is now partnered with and insulting us. And he thinks that we're too stupid to notice or something. That he promised low gas prices, that he promised no more forever wars, no more involvement in Middle East conflict. And we're now getting the exact opposite. And that's happening because he's a coward. He is a coward for doing this to the American people. And that's going to be his legacy. His legacy is going to be a person who could not stand up to Bibi Netanyahu, a person who just loves money and loves the idea of his name on anything. This is what the world will remember about Donald Trump. Thus far, in 1 year, to recap, his administration has worked to allow the slow erosion of the First Amendment on college campuses, special carve-outs for anti-Semitism. So, in effect, hate speech laws. There's a new IHRA definition for anti-Semitism.
This action makes clear that Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, which prohibits the federal funding of universities and other institutions that engage in discrimination, applies to institutions that traffic in anti-Semitic hate. So this is a very powerful document that we're signing today, and it's been a very big story over the last number of days when they heard. As you know, they had almost universal support in Congress, and yet they didn't get it done. And this has gone on for years and years. They've almost had universal support, but there was always a roadblock. But this year there's no roadblock because I'm doing it myself. It's much easier. And we have support from many in Congress. This is our message to universities. If you want to accept the tremendous amount of federal dollars that you get every year, you must reject anti-Semitism. It's very simple.
My question to you, are mobs shouting from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, or long live the infantata, are those anti-Semitic comments?
When I hear those terms, I find them very upsetting. And I have heard...
That's a great answer to a question I didn't ask, so let me repeat the question. When mobs or people are shouting from the river to the sea, Palestine must be free, or long live the infantata, are those anti-Semitic statements?
And all the acts of terrorism perpetrated by pro-Palestinians against Israelis during the two intifadas, what do you think of those?
I'm not here to debate the first and second intifada with you. I've told you the definition of the word. You can leave it at that and allow me to address the other things that you brought on.
You're being disingenuous. When pro-Palestinian groups outside of New York University chant about intifada, they know what they're doing, and Jewish people know what they're doing. They are invoking the first and second intifada,
I don't know what
which
you say
involved
they're doing,
which
because
involved
every
a lot of
pro-Palestinian
violence and a lot of terrorism.
has been chanting intifada for decades. So, you know, this, and let's go back, let's go to the second phrase you say, from the river to the sea.
Yeah.
Now they want to make a problem with that. Any chant that we say, you know, there's this accusation of anti-Semitism.
For 30 years, I am very consistent, and I'm saying something very simple. This conflict is not on the lack of a state of Palestinian, but the existence of a state, the Jewish state. Every area that we evacuate, we receive terrible terror against that. It happened in South Lebanon, in Gaza, and also Judea and Samaria, which we did it. And therefore, I clarify that in any other arrangement, in the future, the state of Israel have to control on the entire area from the river to the sea.
Did the president address Netanyahu's use of the phrase from the river to the sea in their conversation today? I know the White House has previously said that phrase is divisive. So
I'm not aware that that specific phrase was discussed.
do you condemn him using that phrase?
Look, there's a connotation with that phrase. We've talked about this before, but when you use the phrase "river to the sea," it speaks basically to the mantra of Hamas and in their manifesto, where they basically describe the geographic bounds of what they believe to be Palestine. And if you look at it on the map, if you go look at the four corners that they describe it, it's basically the state of Israel. They just don't believe it should exist. So again, it's not a phrase that that we recommend using, given because of that context.
This wasn't Hamas, this was Netanyahu.
I understand. I don't have anything more on that, and I certainly don't have anything more on the conversation to read out with respect to that.
A definition that is so broad that it includes, quote, accusing Jewish citizens of being more loyal to Israel or to the alleged priorities of Jews worldwide than to the interest of their own nations. That's interesting, because he doesn't even know what they're writing and what they're putting together, he's not paying attention, he hilariously violates his own law when he discusses his boss, Miriam Adelson.
Miriam, stand up, please. She really is. I mean, she loves this country. She loves this country. Her and her husband are so incredible. We miss him so dearly. But I actually asked her, I'm going to get her in trouble with this, but I actually asked her once, I said, so Miriam, I know you love Israel. What do you love more, the United States or Israel? She refused to answer. That might mean Israel, I must say. We love you. Thank you, darling, for being here. That's a great honor.
It is the same apparatus that was running the White House when Biden was in office, that would have continued running it, had Kamala run, that is running it now that Trump is running. That's the way that I see things. And I don't know, has Trump grown almost erratic in the manner in which he is gaslighting us? Yeah, I definitely did not foresee that Epstein moment coming. You know, I was not a person, I spent time explaining to people that Kamala was not who she said she was. She was completely lying about her past, completely lying about her history. And I did the Kamala Chronicles. But I've been off that like hardcore MAGA Trump train for a while, actually. Obviously, I think that the thing that does let me down the most, or that has been so shocking to me, is for him to have survived the assassination attempt. And what he is dedicating the rest of his time to is destroying America for Israel. Like, you survive multiple assassination attempts, and your instinct is, what are they telling you? You survived it so that you could do more for Israel? I can't even comprehend what is going on.
I think it was David Icke who woke me up to the ancient cults and the bloodlines that continued to these generations. And I think you're the first survivor, perhaps, who's actually detailed how that has continued over the ages. So if you could maybe expand on that a little bit, I think the viewers would find this fascinating.
What specifically would you like expanded on?
So what was the cult that you mentioned earlier, the ancient one?
The cult of Baal. B-A-L.
Yes.
B-A-L.
Yep.
I know very little about it. My family masqueraded themselves as Jewish publicly. But behind closed doors, you know, at Passover dinners, when I was drugged, would admit, we are Satanists.
Epstein's bank account was called Baal, the ancient Canaanite deity which people had sacrificed their children to. A victim's diary shows that she was impregnated multiple times and forced to give birth for Ghislaine and Epstein. Israel is mentioned twice as much as Donald Trump in the new documents. Here he is discussing with Roger Schank, a Jewish American academic and hedge fund worker, saying Jews create vast fortunes by manipulating markets and creating financial speculation and exploiting labor. He says, let the Goyim deal in the real world. In a discussion with the Rothschild family, Epstein says if they overthrew the Ukrainian government, there would be great opportunities. The Rothschild family paid Epstein $25 million for certain algorithms. While talking to Peggy Seigel, August 7th of 2010, she asks if an event is going to be 100% Jewish. He says no, they'll have Goyim in abundance. But don't worry, they're just brilliant wasps from JP Morgan. Joshua Finkelstein, BlackRock's Larry Finkelstein's son, is accused of not having any respect for non-Jews, seeing them as not human. This is from his ex-girlfriend, Svetlana. He pressures her to have an abortion. In 2017, Epstein has a conversation talking about if you want to hire the best people, you have to hire only Jews. Only hire those who can prove they are genetically Jewish. Maria Farmer, one of the first victims to come out and name Epstein.
I wasn't allowed to go get food. And when I called Ghislaine and asked why I couldn't eat there, she said, it's a Jewish country club. You're not Jewish. They're not going to serve you. They, honest to God, think their DNA is better than everybody else's.
Said that their operation was motivated by Jewish supremacy.
What's your thoughts? Please be respectful with your comments. Also, please click the like, click the notification bell, and subscribe to this channel.
Listen, Genesis chapter 11 verse 10 explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this back, Genesis 14 verse 13, Abraham steps on the scene. Being a descendant of Shem, which is a fact, means Abraham too was black. Abraham, born in the city of a black man, called Nimrod, grandson of Ham. Ham had 4 sons. One was named Canaan. Here, let me do some explaining. Abraham, Isaac was Jacob had 12 sons, for real, and these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10, these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10, these the children of Israel, according to Genesis chapter 10.